Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And thank you so much. I'm so pleased to rise today to be able to finally speak to my bill on local foods. This is a bill that I've been working on for a good 2 years with help from throughout the country, with contributions from throughout the country, from producers, from many people who've truly inspired me. And my own leader, Jack Layton, my first leader actually, Jack Layton, really inspired me. And I worked for a long time with the member for British Columbia, and we worked on this pan-Canadian strategy that didn't exist, and I hope now it's going to exist. I was also supported by other members, the member for Masquinongé and the member for Welland as well. Why is it so important for the NDP to support producers and support local food? Well, our producers work the land. They produce the food that meets one of our essential fundamental needs, and that is to be able to eat 3 times a day. So it's fundamental. And producers, agricultural producers, are rarely acknowledged for all the work that they do. This is very demanding work. This is work that requires considerable time, energy, and investment, and yet they do it with passion. They do this with their own hands. And it should be supported on a daily basis by the federal government, as provincial governments do, and as municipal governments should also do. Now, I became aware of this, that is to say the lack of support for producers, because my riding is mainly rural and agricultural. So I have 29 out of 31 municipalities that are rural in my riding. And one of the first things that I did when I was elected as a member of parliament was to go and meet local people, local stakeholders, and so of course I met many producers. And I learned about this circuit in Quebec that people can follow to discover local businesses and local producers. So whether you go to restaurants or hotels or to farms, you can do a sort of stop-by-stop circuit throughout various ridings and learn about and even taste products, whether they be produce, whether it be meat, whether it be wine. And so it's then that I started becoming more and more aware of how important it was to acknowledge the work of these people. And I also became aware of the importance of buying locally when I realized that I myself didn't even know which products came from nearby and which didn't. I didn't know that I could find, whether or not I could find local produce in my own grocery store. So there are many things that I discovered by having conversations with producers and by having conversations with citizens, people of my own age, older people, young people. And I started asking questions. Where do you think the food that we eat comes from? And many children said, well, it comes from the grocery store. Well, it doesn't come from the grocery store. There are people who've worked hard to raise either the food or the animals before it gets to the grocery store and before it gets to our plates. So it's funny, but at the same time it's a little sad because it speaks to how little information that we actually have. And I would like to see this bill become legislation so that producers can really become acknowledged. When you go to the grocery store, more and more people now try and find what the origins of the food they're eating. For example, does the apple that I'm buying come from Chile or does it come from my riding? Has the apple traveled 10 kilometers or has it traveled 30 kilometers or 10,000? It's not just an economic impact that this choice has. It's also a health impact. There's produce that meet certain standards that are produced here, and there's produce that comes from elsewhere that meets different standards. But there's also the whole environmental perspective that's important. So buying locally means buying produce or meat that has been produced by people who are nearby. It may seem like a very simple thing, but there are many barriers to purchasing locally. It's very difficult for producers to have contact with consumers. Now, there's the cost of transportation, for example. Before fruit and vegetables come out of the orchard or they come from the farm, well, they have to be loaded into a truck or a boat or whatever, and that costs money. They also have to be labeled. That costs money. There are problems with transportation networks as well. There are several organizations that have started setting up public markets, public drop-off points, so that people can buy, for example, baskets of local fresh produce. But there's a lack of awareness amongst the public. And one of our realities here is that we have a long winter, and therefore producers can't necessarily provide constant supply throughout the year to big grocery chains, and therefore it makes it more difficult for them to have access to that market. We need to think about that. And the federal government also needs to make more of an effort in awareness raising in order to make sure that people know what is growing here, what is growing in their region, when it's growing, and also so that consumers can know during the winter what one can still buy. So even if those farms aren't necessarily operating, it's good to know what can be purchased. So there's a lot of information that our public needs. There are people who've been writing me, emailing me, that I've been having discussions with over Facebook, and I'm being told that they would like to be able to encourage and support producers, but they don't know where to begin. They don't know who to contact or where to go. Now, groceries are making more and more of an effort, or grocery stores, rather, are making more and more of an effort, but there still is a lot of work to do. There could be places, for example, in public markets, in convenience stores. There could be more areas where producers could bring and sell their produce. Because currently, it's not straightforward. It's very difficult, for example, for seniors to go to points that are further removed in order to be able to purchase local food. So it would be nice if they had some sort of drop-off point in their area where they could buy that meat and produce. Seniors are vulnerable, their health is vulnerable, and they should be eating fresh, healthy produce. But they often tell me that they don't, because of the reasons I mentioned and because it's expensive. Now, is it normal that 2 liters of Pepsi cost less than, for example, 1 liter of fresh juice? So actually, a junk food is a lot less expensive than a healthy food. And when healthy food is local food, why is it that it's still more expensive? We need to intervene. We need to support everyone to eat well and for producers to be able to provide that access to their produce. Now, despite these barriers that I've described, more and more Canadians are buying locally, and they want to encourage their local producers. Why? Because it's good for their health, and because producers have a huge contribution to make. Producers actually contribute 8% of GDP each year. That's 1 job out of 8 in Canada. That's the equivalent of $101 billion per year. So just imagine if each and every person were to take $5 each when they do their groceries to buy locally. That's money that goes local. And a local producer actually in our area said if You simply take $5 within your groceries, $5 worth of your groceries, and you spend it locally. That allows a producer actually to make a living and not simply survive. And it also creates more opportunities for consumers.
And we know that since 2006, some 8,000 farms have had to stop their operations because of problems, and they are having trouble finding farmers of the future as well, because the ground is very dry, it's an arid climate. Now we need to do something with the situation. The federal government needs to take action to help farmers and producers. Now I could continue saying that this bill is a result of 2 series of consultations with producers, distributors, and people who've worked on food policy across the country. Now, I could talk about the consultations. I don't want to mention everyone, but I consulted nationally and locally with the Canadian Federation of Agriculture, that has our support, the UPA, the Coalition for Food, several retailers, the large grocery chains, and many members of the general public who responded to the call and said, yes, it is very important. My bill has 2 parts. It requires the federal government to establish a pan-Canadian strategy in conjunction with the provinces. We want the federal minister to sit down with the his provincial and territorial counterparts, and also with the farmers and distributors, to have all of these people around the same table to discuss a common definition of local. All of the provinces have a bit of a different definition of what that means. We're also calling for the setting up of a tribunal or a forum where they can exchange best practices, because each province focuses on certain aspects, but producers aren't necessarily aware of what could be done and what's effective. So it would make them aware of tools available to them. So it's important for people to have an opportunity to sit down and to have these discussions. Secondly, we would call on the government to set the example by establishing a local supply chain for its federal institutions, agencies, federal hospitals, prisons, etc. 28,000 cafeterias that could provide an opening or make a larger, more room, in fact, for producers, and that too would make a huge difference. So I hope we'll make it that far and do that, because it's part, if you will, of clear political will by the government. Producers need assistance overcoming a number of challenges. First of all, labor is very difficult to come by, because agriculture is difficult manual labor, working over specific periods of time, and so we need to make a distinction there. And if we don't buy local, then who will? We really need to focus on these aspects. In Canada, there are already more than 2,300 local initiatives that to which the government could contribute to promote them and to help spread them to the rest of Canada. This is important. For us, it's important that the federal government do its share as well to encourage farmers to be innovative. Things are difficult at present because they're having such trouble simply surviving in many cases. For them, producers to be able to continue to making changes to reducing our environmental footprint as well, we need to support them in their work. And I think that this kind of national strategy would be very worthwhile. So I hope that all members will support me and vote in favor of this bill. Thank you.